Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are in the chapter Out of the Sevenfold Ignorance Towards the Sevenfold Knowledge, and we just began the chapter, so we're on page 755, beginning with our call.
This evolution.
So I was a page behind. This evolution. Yeah.
So we'll read the summary of the previous para so that we know what he is speaking about. The spiritualization of man must include all the parts of the being. It is not like the ascetic way, a rejection of the lower nature in order to ascend into the planes above mind. So this is constantly Srindo's stress that we are not to reject the physical world, but to also try and perfect the body, life and mind. As the consciousness rises, the new summits reached must not be narrow, pointed pinnacles. The power of the higher planes must percolate into the lower hemisphere and enlarge its scope. In other words, the ascent of evolution is not an escape into the more perfect by abandoning the lower parts in imperfection. Ascension must also effect an integration, a raising, widening and perfecting of the lower reaches of our existence. This is what he has said in the previous one. It's a repeated theme in Sri that we are not to neglect the body-mind life. The ascetic impulse of just escaping from body-mind life and not bothering about the body-mind life, Sri is not
It's not his
a votary
way.
of that theory. He would like also this to be changed. He has no objection to others doing it. He says if they want to do that, let them do that. But that's not the total perfection that I want. I want even change of body-mind life. I read the next para. This evolution, this process of heightening and widening and integralization is in its nature a growth and an ascent out of the sevenfold ignorance into the integral knowledge. The crux of that ignorance is a constitutional. It resolves itself into a manifold ignorance of the true character of our being, an unawareness of our total self.
Of our becoming.
A true character of our becoming. What did I say?
Being.
Oh, okay. Character of being, becoming. The true character of our becoming, an unawareness of our total self, of which the key is a limitation by the plane we inhabit and by the present predominant principle of our nature. So, he is talking about the constitutional ignorance. That means we don't know our becoming. When he uses the word becoming, he is referring to the body, mind and life. Okay, that's a becoming. Because the being is your soul, which is not subject to mutation. Okay, that's a being. So this is the becoming. But we don't know that our body is coming from universal matter. We don't know that. We don't know that our vital is a small formation of the universal plane of prana, energy, which you see in the universe. The energy is everywhere. And we have drawn a little of that energy into ourselves. You can see the energy everywhere. The wind is blowing, the storm is coming, the river is flowing. Everything is energy. The sun is shining bright. Energy is there everywhere, and our energy is only a small part of that. Exactly in the same way also the mind. So that we are not aware of. That's what Sri is saying. Ignorance is the constitutional. It resolves itself into a manifold ignorance of the true character of our becoming. The true character of our becoming body-mind life is not something independent of everything else. It's depending on the universal. An unawareness of our total self, of which the key is the limitation by the plane we inhabit and by the present predominant principle of our nature. So, the plane we inhabit, wherever plane we are in, that determines our understanding of things. Okay. So, the plane we inhabit is the plane of matter. The present predominant principle in our nature is the mental intelligence with the sense mind, which depends upon matter as a support and pedestal. Now that we have to understand also that life by itself is not seen independent of matter. Wherever you see life, you will see that it is linked with matter. Life as the principle of life is there, no doubt. But we don't see it. We see it only when it is allied with and linked to matter. The smallest things there is matter, life in it. Okay, so that's what it's meaning. So the plane we inhabit is the plane of matter, clear. The present predominant principle in our nature is the mental intelligence with the sense mind. Sense mind, the physical mind, okay, which depends upon matter as its support and pedestal. As a consequence, the preoccupation of our mental intelligence and its powers with the material existence, as it is shown to us through the senses, and with life as it has been formulated in a compromise between life and matter, is a special stamp of our constitutional ignorance. Okay. This natural materialism or materialized vitalism, it's very interesting what the use of words. Materialized vitalism. Vitalism, when it is not materialized, you don't see it. You see the power, you see the prana in the sun shining, but you don't see it as life. You see it as pure energy. But when you want to see life, then it is always linked with matter. That's what he's saying. You see the wind, you feel the wind blowing, but you don't think of it as life. But it is life, it is the principle of life, prana. But that's why he says the word natural materialism or materialized vitalism. There can be a vitalism without matter. That's what you see, the energy in the universe. The lightning, the rain, the river flowing. That is immaterialized vitalism. Okay, so this clamping of ourselves to our beginnings, which are the beginnings, matter, is a form of self-restriction, narrowing the scope of our existence, which is very insistence on the human being. Matter is determining everything. Even our development of life is linked with matter. Even our development of mind is linked with matter. Our brain gives us the power to think, but it is matter. So that's what Swami is saying. It is, and he's using a very interesting word. He's saying clamping. Our whole being, mind and life is clamped riveted actually to matter. Okay, so clamping ourselves to our beginnings. What are the beginnings? Matter. Is a form of self-restriction, narrowing the scope of our existence, which is very insistent on the human being. Matter is completely dominating our vital and our mind. It is the first necessity of his physical existence, but is afterwards forged by a primal ignorance into a chain that hampers his every step upwards. They attempt to grow out of this limitation of the wholeness, power and truth of the spirit by the materialized mental intelligence, and out of the subjection of the soul to material nature is the first step towards real progress of our humanity, going to the mental level. For our ignorance is not entire, it's a limitation of consciousness. It is not the complete nescience which is a stamp of the same ignorance in purely material existence. those which have not only matter for their plane, but matter for the dominant principle. So, we'll try to understand what he's saying here. He's saying that in man, the ignorance is not total. The ignorance is total only in matter, in stones, in mud. It is total. There is no knowledge at all there. But when it comes to life, already a little bit of consciousness is there. So it's not total ignorance. 90% ignorance, maybe even more. But a little bit of understanding is there. The animal knows what to eat and what not to eat. Okay, so life, there is a little bit of consciousness. But when you come to mind, the consciousness becomes more. Ignorance becomes less. There is ignorance, but still it becomes much less. So that's the first principle. That's what he's saying. Okay, so it is not the complete essence which is a stamp of the same ignorance in purely material existences. Purely material existences, stones, mountains, not plants. Plants is not purely material existence. That's what he means. Those which have not only matter for their plane, but matter for their dominant principle. It's a partial limiting and dividing. It's a partial, a limiting, a dividing, and very largely a falsifying knowledge. Out of that limitation and falsification, we have to grow into the truth of our spiritual being. So, it's like if my eyes are red colored, whatever I see, I will see as red, but I will think that that's natural. My eyes don't see everything, it doesn't see subtle things, but I feel that that's the right thing. I don't realize that no, there is a great limitation in my eyesight, I am seeing only physical things. We don't understand, that's ignorance. Okay, I'll read the summary and then we'll go to the next para. The para that we have read just now, I am summarizing. This evolution is essentially a rising upward but widening inwards, outwards from ignorance to knowledge. So, what is this ignorance? We do not know the true nature of our becoming. And what is becoming? Assumption of a body, life and mind. So we don't know how our body, mind and life have been constructed. From where? What is the material by which it is constructed? We do not know the totality of what we truly are. Why is this so? It is because of the insistent downward pull of the material world which we inhabit. Man has, of course, a mental awareness as well as a vital sense mind. But these are hypothecated to the powerful bank of matter. That's an interesting image. Okay, when you want money from the bank, you go and you say, I want a loan of 1,00,000 rupees. The bank will say, fine, but what's your collateral? So you have to say, okay, I'll mortgage my house. Okay, so that is, it is hypothecated to the bank. So our mind and our life are hypothecated to matter. That's what he's saying. Okay, so this dependence and reliance on matter, which is unintelligence, dense and dark, is a cause of man's ignorance. It's a chain that enslaves the soul to the outer nature. But this is a necessary starting base. Also, we must note that this ignorance is not complete. It's a half knowledge, which is partial, limited, falsifying. It is out of this falsehood that man has to rise into the knowledge. This is what he said in the previous para. So, although it is ignorance, in the beginning it is necessary. Okay, so we go to the next para. This preoccupation with life and matter is at the beginning right and necessary, because the first step that man has to take is to know and possess this physical existence. So we often use the word possess. That means you must be able to do what you want with this physical existence. So possess something means to do whatever you want with that material. Okay, so this physical existence, as well as he can, by applying his thought and intelligence to such experience of it as his sense mind can give to him. The sense mind is giving us not all the knowledge, but whatever knowledge the sense mind is giving you, you have to make the best of it. That's what science does. Okay? Science is not using occult knowledge, it is using sense knowledge. And it is proceeding further on that. But this is only a preliminary step. And if we stop there, we have made no real progress. We are where we were and have gained only more physical elbow room to move about and more power for our mind to establish a relative knowledge and an insufficient and precarious mastery, and for our life desire to push things about and jostle and hustle around amid the throng of physical forces and existences. The utmost widening of a physical objective knowledge, science, one word for physical objective knowledge. Physical objective knowledge outside yourself, not subjective knowledge. Psychological subjective knowledge is your occult knowledge or spiritual knowledge if you want, or psychological knowledge. But this is physical objective knowledge. It is physical and objective outside yourself. Even if it embrace the most distant solar systems and the deepest layers of the earth and sea and the most subtle powers of material substance and energy, is not the essential gain for us, not the one thing which it is most needful for us to acquire. We'll look at the sentence again and we'll see the use of words, why he is doing that. The utmost widening of a physical objective knowledge. Why is he not saying science? Because he is describing science. He is saying it is physical study of the physical world and not anything else. Secondly, he is saying it is objective. It's not subjective. So he is giving you a description of, and this is exactly what they do in Sanskrit also. I saw the similarity. In Sanskrit also they do that. They don't use one simple word, but they describe it. Okay. Instead of saying king, they will say the one who protects the public. So they give the a description of the king. So this is doing the same thing here. He is not saying scientific knowledge, he is saying physical objective knowledge. Okay, it's very interesting the word how he uses. Even if it embrace the most distant solar systems and the deepest layers of the earth and sea and the most subtle powers of material substance and energy, is not the essential gain for us. Now let's look one by one at this, what he is saying. Embrace the most distant solar systems. You may know Orion, what it contains. You may know the how the stars are moving. You may know the circuit of a what is it called? A comet. You may know. But that's all. It is not improving. It doesn't change your life. It doesn't change your consciousness. Okay? That's what Swami is meaning. And the deepest layers of the earth and the sea, and the most subtle powers of material substance and energy, what's he talking about? He is talking about solar energy, he is talking about TV waves, he is talking of the mobile towers emitting these. That's what he means by the most subtle powers of material substance and energy. Okay? The material substance and energy. It doesn't help. It is not the essential gain for us, not the one thing which is the most needful for us to acquire. That is why the gospel of materialism, in spite of its dazzling triumphs of physical science, and Sri Aurobindo wrote this 100 years ago, when he wrote the dazzling triumphs of physical science, they had not yet invented the TV, they had not yet invented the mobile, they had not yet gone to the moon, and still Sri Aurobindo is saying dazzling triumphs of physical science. Now it is 10 times more dazzling. Okay? Dazzling triumphs of physical science proves itself always in the end a vain and helpless creed.
Whoa.
He is explaining why. And that too is why physical science itself, with all its achievements, though it may accomplish comfort, can never achieve happiness and fullness of being for the human race. So what does it mean? If I have a mobile, if I have a nice bed to sleep on, okay, it will give me comfort. If I have air conditioning, my comfort will increase. But is it going to give me happiness? No. Why? The air conditioning fails and I will get depressed and I will get disturbed. So where is the happiness? It is giving you comfort but not happiness. That's what Swami is saying. Your mobile stops working. It's very convenient. You are very happy. Oh, I can talk to my friend in America. No problem. But if battery has run out, then it produces a sorrow, not happiness. You get worried. You want to get it changed. What has happened to my... So it doesn't produce happiness. It produces only comfort. That's what Swami is saying. Okay, so it may accomplish comfort, can never achieve happiness and fullness of being for the human race. Our true happiness lies in the true growth of our whole being, in a victory throughout the total range of our existence, in mastery of the inner as well as and more than the outer, the hidden as well as the overt nature. Our true completeness comes not by describing wider circles on the plane where we began, but by transcendence. You have to go beyond body, mind, life. It is for this reason that after the first necessary foundation in life and matter, we have to heighten our force of consciousness, deepen. It is for this reason that after the first necessary foundation in life and matter, we have to heighten our force of consciousness, deepen, widen, subtilize it. Subtilize. How do you pronounce it?
Subtilize.
Subtilize,
yes.
Subtilize it. We must first liberate our mental selves and enter into a freer, finer and nobler play of our mental existence. For the mental is much more than the physical, our true existence, because we are, even in our instrumental or expressive nature, predominantly mind and not matter, mental much rather than physical beings. That growth into the full mental being is the first transitional moment towards human perfection and freedom. It does not actually perfect, but it does not liberate the soul, but it lifts us one step out of the material and vital absorption and prepares the loosening of the hold of the ignorance. So I'm saying very clearly, mental development is very necessary. It may not make you perfect, it may not liberate the soul, but it does raise you to another level of consciousness. If you compare with the animal, you will immediately see what he's saying. The animal is not, even the savage in the central jungles of Africa maybe, or in the Amazon Delta, they will not be able to do mathematics. Will they be able to understand differential calculus and integral calculus? No. But mental man can. He can think of morality, he can think of something that is, he can think of God, he can think of religion, but not the savage in the Amazon Delta.
Primitive man.
Yeah, primitive man. They will not be able to think of abstract things. So that's why mental development is necessary. It may not release your soul, it may not liberate you, it may not make you perfect. You will remain imperfect. But still it's a huge step. But it lifts us one step out of the material and vital absorption and prepares the loosening of the hold of ignorance. I'll read the summary. That man at first preoccupies himself with the material world is just and proper. He must, of course, familiarize himself with the physical world he lives in and depends upon. He must even become master of his environment if he can. But he cannot permanently stay put at the material level. Man may have partially controlled the world around him, but he must push on to make real evolutionary progress. He must exceed his physical and vital needs and set his mental intelligence free. In contrast to the animal, man is more mental than vital and physical. Man is more mental than vital and physical. Essentially, science occupies itself with only the material world. But there is much more in existence than mere matter. Science may have made living easier, given more comfort and leisure to man, but it has not given mastery. Man must achieve true happiness, not merely comfort. Thus, to escape the ignorant clutch of body and life, he must become the mental man. Intelligence may not liberate his soul, but it does take a step nearer to that goal. That's what he said in the para.
Next
We
para.
can go to the next para. Our gain in becoming more perfect mental beings is that we get to the possibility of a subtler, higher, and wider existence, consciousness, force, happiness, and delight of being. In proportion as we rise in the scale of mind, a greater power of these things comes to us. Our mental consciousness acquires for itself at the same time more vision and power and more subtlety and plasticity. And we are able to embrace more of the vital and physical existence itself, to know it better, to use it better, to give it nobler values, a broader range, a more sublimated action, an extended scale, higher issues. Man is, in his characteristic power of nature, a mental being. But in the first steps of his emergence, he is more of the mentalized animal, preoccupied like the animal with his bodily existence. He employs his mind for the uses, interests, desires of the life and the body, as a servant and minister, not yet as a sovereign and master. It is as he grows in mind and in proportion as his mind asserts his selfhood and independence against the tyranny of life and matter that he grows in stature. The more he depends on his mind and less on the vital, he becomes more and more perfect and more really a man. Okay. On one side, mind by its emancipation controls and illumines the life and physicality. On the other, the purely mental aims, occupations, pursuits of knowledge begin to get a value. The mind, liberated from a lower control and preoccupation, introduces into life a government, an uplifting, a refinement, a finer balance and harmony. The vital and physical movements are directed and put into order, transformed even as far as they can be by a mental agency. They are taught to be the instruments of reason and obedient to an enlightened will, an ethical perception, and an aesthetic intelligence. The more this can be accomplished, the more the race becomes truly human, a race of mental beings. So, the more the mind develops, he has given great detail, the more you are becoming in control of your body and your life.
But it's still only a race of mental beings.
Yes, that's right. It becomes a truly human, a race of mental beings. So, we'll see now clearly what he means by how man is superior to the animal. Okay. But what exactly is the gain when mental intelligence is established? His life becomes subtler, higher, more noble. He grows in consciousness, force, and happiness. Okay. Consciousness, very clearly, he grows. Force also, he gets more force. He can do things which the animal can't do. And happiness also. His outlook on life gives him power, vision, subtlety. He graduates from mere physical needs and vital desires to ideas, ideals. Ideas and ideals the animal can't have, so it's much more when you become a mental being. He develops arts, ethics, aesthetic activities, which clearly the animal cannot do. So this is what happens when you go to the mental level. Develops arts, ethics, aesthetic activities. He conquers material obstacles, asserts his freedom from the tyranny of the vital. He starts controlling the vital. The animal doesn't control its vital. He governs himself better than the animal. he makes reason a guiding principle. He becomes the mental man, not the half-animal man that he was. This is how the mental man is superior to the vital man. We go to the next para. It is this perception of life that was put in front of the Greek thinkers, and it is a vivid flowering in the sunlight of this ideal that imparts so great a fascination to Hellenic life and culture. In later times, this perception was lost, and when it came back, it returned much diminished, mixed with more turbid elements. The perturbation of a spiritual ideal imperfectly grasped by the understanding and not at all realized in the life's practice, but present with its positive and negative mental and moral influences, and over against it the pressure of a dominant and inordinate vital urge which could not get its free self-satisfied movement, stood in the way of the sovereignty of the mind and the harmony of life, its realized beauty and balance. So, he is saying that the Greek culture was a very high standard, it lost it, it disappeared. Today's Greece is not what it used to be, okay? Obviously not. And when it came back, it was much diminished. Okay? An opening to higher ideals, a greater range of life was gained, but the elements of a new idealism were only cast into its action as an influence, could not dominate and transform it, and finally the spiritual endeavor, thus ill understood and unrealized, was thrown aside. He is talking of Greece, ancient Greece. Its moral effects remained, but deprived of the sustaining spiritual element, dwindled towards ineffectivity. The vital urge, assisted by an immense development of physical intelligence, became the preoccupation of the race. An imposing increase of a certain kind of knowledge and efficiency was the first result. The most recent outcome has been a perilous spiritual ill health and a vast disorder. He is talking of in Europe. There is this famous historian, Will Durant. I think it was Will Durant who said, maybe he or maybe somebody else, he says, the civilization of modern Europe is nothing but a footnote to Greek history. So Swamdev is praising the Hellenic culture so much, and he is agreeing fully with this statement. That it is only a development, it was not something new that came about. It's only a footnote to Greek culture. And remember, Swamdev himself was there in Greek at that time.
Yes.
He was there in Greece with his friend Dilip Kumar Roy. In one letter he says that I remember my contact with him in ancient Greece.
Yes.
He was very fond of Dilip Kumar Roy, and he used to always answer his questions first. Okay. 3 pages, 4 pages. The others used to be much shorter answers. So when he was asked why this partiality, he said, I remember my contact with him in ancient Greece.
And he never denied him a response.
Exactly. He never accepted Swamdev because he did not accept Mother.
Exactly.
That was the problem.
But he also said, I've given myself to Krishna. Remember that? And Sri Aurobindo said, if you can give yourself to Krishna, you can give yourself to me. Oh.
No difference, it doesn't matter. I read the next para?
Yes.
It is this perception of life that was put in front of the Greek thinkers. And it's a vivid flowering in the sunlight of this ideal that imparts. Oh, we read this, no? Yes, we read this.
That imparts so great a fascination.
Yeah, we read this. We have to read the next one. for mind itself.
Yes.
760.
760.
For mind itself is not enough. Even its largest play of intelligence creates only a qualified half-light. A surface mental knowledge of the physical universe is still more imperfect guide. For the thinking animal, it might be enough, but not for a race of mental beings in labor of a spiritual evolution. Even the truth of physical things cannot be entirely known, nor can the right use of our material existence be discovered by physical science, and an outward knowledge alone are made possible by the mastery of physical and mechanical processes alone. To know, to use rightly, we must go beyond the truth of physical phenomenon and process. We must know what is within and behind it. For we are not merely embodied minds. There is a spiritual being, a spiritual principle, a spiritual plane of nature. Into that we have to heighten our force of consciousness, to widen by that still more largely, even universally and infinitely, our range of being and our field of action, to take up by that our lower life and use it for greater ends and on a larger plan in the light of a spiritual truth of existence. Our labor of mind and struggle of life cannot come to any solution until we have gone beyond the obsessing lead of an inferior nature, integralized our natural being in the being and consciousness, learn to utilize our natural instruments by the force and for the joy of the Spirit. Then only can the constitutional ignorance, the ignorance of the real build of our existence from which we suffer, change into a true and effective knowledge of our being and becoming. For what we are is spirit. At present, using mind predominantly, life and body subordinately, with matter for our original field, but not our only field of experience. But this is only at present. Our imperfect mental instrumentation is not the last word of our possibilities, for there are in us, dormant or invisibly and imperfectly active, other principles beyond mind and closer to the spiritual nature. There are more direct powers and luminous instruments. There is a higher status. There are greater ranges of dynamic action than those that belong to our present physical, vital and mental existence. These can become our own status, part of our being. They can be principles, powers and instruments of our own enlarged nature. But for that, it is not enough to be satisfied with a vague or an ecstatic ascent into spirit, or a formless exaltation through the touch of its infinities. The principle has to evolve, as life has evolved, as mind has evolved, and organize its own instrumentation, its own satisfaction. Then we shall possess the true constitution of our being, and we shall have conquered the ignorance. So, it is not enough to ascend only. You have to bring that down and use it in life. That's what he's saying. So we read the summary of what he's saying here. The mind of man is not a true instrument of knowledge. Even the highest intelligence is a half knowledge. Scientific knowledge of the physical world may be sufficient for practical life. It is not enough for man preparing to spiritualize himself. To go beyond the physical world, we must know what is beyond, behind and above it. Man has a soul, a spiritual entity. There are subtler and more powerful instruments of knowledge within him. It is not enough to experience these once or feel their influence, or have some touch of these ecstasies. He must discover these splendors and use them for practical life in the world. These hidden principles must be operative in daily life. A conquest of ignorance may then become possible. When we know what is behind, above, and around, we can be said to have lost our constitutional ignorance. So, what are these powers that he is speaking about? They are usually the Ashtasiddhis, the 8 powers of a yogi. When he goes into the higher levels of consciousness, he gets all these powers. Anima, Lagima, Garima, Mahima. He can become as big as he wants, he can become as small as he wants, he can disappear, not physically with the subtle body, and then he can get whatever he wants. Okay, Prakamyam, he can get also Aishwaryam, he can get control over creatures, over events, over even men. All these powers can be developed. There is a Arthur Avalon. He was an Englishman who was very much interested in Tantra, and he wrote a book, very famous book it became, The Serpent Power. He was interested in Tantra, and he said that he saw one day in front of his own eyes a yogi looking at a scorpion, and it burnt him to ashes. With his sight, he burned the scorpion to ashes. That's the sort of power that Shakespeare is speaking. All these powers exist in man, but we have to get them. I just give an example to show. Okay. We have time for one more?
One more para.
Okay. The conquest of our constitutional ignorance. He is again and again saying constitutional ignorance. What does it mean? Let's make that very clear. We think we are body, mind, life. But we don't know that our body has come from universal matter. Our vital has come from universal prana, the energy. And our mind also has come from nature. We don't know that. That's a constitutional ignorance. We feel it is self-sufficient. Our conquest of our constitutional ignorance cannot be complete, cannot become integrally dynamic. In other words, we can't use that knowledge if we have not conquered our psychological ignorance. So now he is coming to the second ignorance, psychological ignorance. He has told us constitutional, now psychological. Our psychological ignorance consists in a limitation of our self-knowledge to that little wave of superficial stream of our being, which is the conscient waking self. My conscious waking self is, I am aware of my body, mind, life. That's all. Conscient waking self. This part of our being is an original flux of formless or only half formulated movements carried on in an automatic continuity, supported and held together by an active surface memory and a passive underlying consciousness in its flow from moment to moment of time, organized and interpreted by our reason and our witnessing and participating intelligence. A very interesting sentence, and we'll look at it carefully. Maybe next time, I don't know. Behind it is an occult existence and energy of our secret being, without which this superficial consciousness and activity could not have existed or acted. In matter only, an activity is manifest, inconscient in the outside of things, which is all we know. For the indwelling consciousness in matter, the indwelling consciousness in matter is secret, subliminal, not manifested in the inconscient form and involved energy. But in us, consciousness has become partly manifest, partly awake. But this consciousness is hedged and imperfect. It is bound by its habitual self-limitation and moves in a restricted circle, except when there are flashes, intimations or upsurgings from the secrecy within us, which break the limits of the formation or flow beyond them or widen the circle. But these occasional visitations cannot enlarge us far beyond our present capacities, are not enough to revolutionize our status. That can only be done if we can bring into it the higher undeveloped lights and powers potential in our being and get them consciously and normally into play. For this, we must be able to draw freely from those ranges of our being to which they are native, but which are at present subconscient, or rather secretly intraconscient and circumconscient, or else superconscient to us. Or the yet more that is also possible, we must enter into these inner and higher parts of ourselves by an inward plunge or disciplined penetration and bring back with us to the surface their secrets. Or, achieving a still more radical change of our consciousness, we must learn to live within and no longer on the surface, and be and act from the inner depths and from a soul that has become sovereign over the nature. So he is saying we have to go deep into ourselves. Living within is a word he often uses. Okay. Living within. The inside is more real to me than the outside. That's a living within. I read the summary?
Yeah, we can do the summary.
We'll read the summary.
Yes.
To remove our constitutional ignorance, we must conquer our psychological ignorance. So we know what the constitutional ignorance is. Now he is going to tell us what the psychological ignorance is. And what is that? It is a limitation of our consciousness to the small superficial movement of our outer nature, body, mind and life, in which we seem to be conscious. But this outer nature is a tiny formulation in constant flux of universal forces. Okay? What is meant by the flux of the body? Every day we are eating something, we are breathing something, we are drinking water, and we are also, so constantly there is a change. A constant flux. We don't think of it that way. But the body is never the same, it's constantly changing. It's the same with the vital and with the mind. It's a constant flux. Okay. So, but this outer nature is a tiny formulation in constant flux of universal forces. The body is a very small created material form out of the universal plane of matter. It is not a static fixed form. The individual body is incessantly interacting with its universal counterpart, and that is the universal original substance. It takes in matter and throws out matter. The permanent body form is an illusion. The same phenomenon of constant interchange, yet appearing to be stable and fixed, applies to both our vitality and our mentality. Both are growing. This outer unstable amalgam of body, life and mentality is not what we truly are. There are more permanent, more powerful, more secret parts in us, inwards, upwards and around. Subconscient, intraconscient, superconscient, circumconscient. All these part of us, but we don't know that. That's our psychological ignorance. Very good. From these vaster universal planes come intimations, flashes of knowledge, upsurges, guidance, which reach our outer selves in rare moments, and even if they reach, they get diluted, distorted, and are taken as mere emotions, sensations, or ordinary thoughts. But we must become conscious of these planes and have regular and sustained contact with them. Even better would be to live in them as man now lives in the body. So, we have examples of that. Surely, Newton's discovery of gravitation was an intuition that came from above. Okay. Then, very clearly, also Einstein's theory of relativity is not just a thought that came to him, it is coming from above. Because the theory of relativity is spiritual. He spoke only of the relativity of material existence. But It is spiritually also is relative. Everything. Everything is relative right up to the supermind. There is nothing fixed about it. So, even better would be to live in them as man now lives in the body. Just as these inner and higher levels are felt to be foreign and external to us at present, if we live within, then the body, life and mind will be felt as external to our consciousness and our real being. Now that's very interesting what he's saying. Now we feel that all these things, our emotions, all that are inside us. And the body, mind, life is what I am. But if you live inside, then you will feel that the body, mind, life is outside me. That's the interesting part. You can also see it another way. If your aura increases, okay, then the body is a small element in yourself. That's what he's saying. So, even better would be to live within and get these inner states. Even better would be to live within, but get these inner and superior states of knowledge, power, bliss, to become functional in our outer waking life. They must be made to become living principles in life. Otherwise, we are not spiritual yet. Spiritual experience is not enough, he is saying. He is saying it has to become practical in life. We stop here today?
Yes. Thank you, Ranga. Namaste all. We'll see you again on Monday.